If you're a fan of hopeful and inspiring books that are based on true stories, then today's book just might be for you. Today, I'll be reviewing Praying with the Enemy by Stephen T. Collis. Welcome to Spencer Reads Everything. I'm your host, Spencer Duncan. I'm taking a look at another book by Stephen T. Collis. In the last several years, he's put out 4 books. They are very different, and I have found them to be very engaging books. This one was a little different, although he has a couple that deal with wars and conflicts. This one deals with the Korean War, but this one's a little different because it is based on a true story, which means that he does have to take some artistic license, and he certainly is going to have to take some liberties when discussing individuals that he would not have any access to their thought process. That is one thing that he does have in this book is talking about what some North Korean security officials were thinking or said. That was something that he would not be able to actually have access to. And the 2 main characters at the heart of this book had passed away before he wrote this book, although one of them had written at least a short biography, and they both had extended family that he could interview. So he even says at the end of this book that the more unrealistic an element of this story is, that actually means the more likely that it was true, hence why he included it, because otherwise it probably would have been harder to really believe this story. But like I said, it is still categorized as a novel because of the approach that he wanted to take to telling the story. So what is this book about? Well, I think Praying with the Enemy gives you a pretty good understanding, but just so you know, this is going to take place during the Korean War. And it is about 2 main individuals. Probably the main individual would be Captain Ward Millar, who is a jet pilot, and he is actually going to go down over North Korea. And so he is going to go down in enemy territory. When he crash lands, he is going to injure his ankles very badly. I believe they are both broken, although the medical attention he gets is really terrible. And so there's always a question of whether not only if they're healing correctly, but if it's making things even worse. And he's just incapable of mobility for quite a while. And he is also going to be pretty quickly captured. But there is also another North Korean soldier named Kim Jae-pil, who was raised a Christian. And if you know anything about communism, especially communism in North Korea, although in other places that communism took over, you see it to a variety of degrees, but there was significant persecution of Christianity. One reason why it was so severe in North Korea, it's not just because communism hates religion, although that is sometimes a feature of it, but is because specifically Christianity was perceived as a foreign influence. And so that was one of the reasons why it was all the more persecuted. And so Kim Jae-pil is really struggling with what he thinks about this communist movement and his role in the military. He actually had already joined the military and gotten some training and deserted the North Korean army once. He is then found. Apparently they don't know that he was a deserter, and so he just gets recruited again, and then he manages to use his previous training in a way that, you know, it really helps to benefit him. He is both capable, but he's also, like I said, very wary of exactly what's going on with this communist revolution. And so he is constantly balancing his personal beliefs and what he experienced growing up and what he is seeing happening and what he feels like to be a whole lot of falsehoods being perpetrated throughout the North Korean army, and the generic commitment that some individuals have to this concept of communism and this new development of a nation state in a way that he feels clearly conflicts and collides with his religious beliefs. That being said, I don't know how devout he is in his faith leading up to this moment. It seems to have been something that influenced him, and it's certainly something that affected the type of person he was, but there isn't any kind of suggestion that maybe he wanted to be a man of the cloth, or that he had any desire to go proselytizing or anything like that. It doesn't seem that that is quite how religious he was, but he was religious enough that when it came to the communist rise and their specific and deliberate persecution of Christians, that's going to be something that just really doesn't sit well with him and causes him to be looking for new opportunities. Additionally, just like many people during the Korean War from both North and South Korea, he has a lot of family that has been heavily persecuted and a lot of family that had tried to escape from North Korea. And so there is also this question of trying to get out of the military and get farther south so that he can hopefully find some of his family members again. Those are the 2 main characters. I should also point out that Captain Ward Millar, one of the things that is emphasized in the beginning is that his wife is very religious, but he is not. As a matter of fact, he's agnostic, probably, maybe not quite atheistic, but certainly has his doubts about divinity and definitely is suspicious about any kind of organized religion. And so that is going to be something that you are seeing him grappling with in this moment of struggle, and it is something that he is really going to go through a major process, and that's a big part of the book as he's going through the tortures, the questioning, the just the poor treatment that he's getting, the awful food that he's getting, all of that. It's going to lead to a type of religious conversion. One element that the author included that I don't know if this actually happened, but I certainly appreciated it, is there is this strong connection between him and his wife. Obviously, he is not getting any kind of letters through or anything like that. She actually is under the impression that he is dead because they don't know anything about him. They just know that the plane was down, and so they have to assume that he is dead. And she is just so convinced he's alive. Now, that in and of itself is not a unique story. That was very common for people that are missing in action until there was an actual body. Many family members refused to believe that any soldier missing in action was actually dead until there was more concrete proof of it. But trying to tie into this element of conversion is just these moments where they just felt like they could sense each other despite being thousands of miles away and despite the terrible conditions that he was in. All of those I thought were really well done, and again, I don't know if those were true elements of the story, but it certainly made it a compelling read, and it was something that I appreciated in this book. I don't want to spoil it for you. I will let you find out exactly what happens to these two main characters. Captain Ward Millar, who has been captured and can't run away if he even wanted to because of his feet, and is being tortured and is just going through this incredible ordeal. And then, of course, the North Korean soldier Kim Jae-pil and what he is going through as he is honestly and openly trying to escape and is trying to find a way to escape. As you can tell by the title, there is obviously going to be a moment in there where their paths are going to cross, and that is going to help dictate the rest of the story. And I would certainly encourage anyone that finds that synopsis interesting to pick this book up. Who is this book for? I would say for anyone that enjoys a good, heartfelt, inspiring story. I will also say, and I've been open about my criticisms of historical fiction, I will say, because this doesn't deal with a famous individual, but rather is dealing with a specific event, and I do think that the author did rely on as much of the primary sources that were available, I do think that this is a great story for his design purposes, and that is to be inspiring and to give you a little information, a little context about the war in Korea, but that isn't its entire purpose. And so this isn't something you have to come away from saying, wait, was this or that accurate about the Korean War? Because that isn't the purpose. And so I think that helps in this regard. And that is always something that I'm struggling with when I read any kind of historical fiction, is the need to balance, what did I actually learn? And then now what do I have to go sort out on my own because they took some liberties in creating that narrative. I didn't feel the need at the end of this book. To my understanding, the most important broad strokes of this story are accurate, and that is going to be inspiring and something worth reading for anyone that is into this type of story. So who is it not for? Well, like I just said, it is not strictly a true story. It is based on a true story. So if you did want to use this as a primary source or an analysis of a primary source, this isn't going to be the best for that. Additionally, if you are looking for a long narrative that is trying to give you a detail about the war in Korea, that's also not really his primary purpose, although you certainly are getting more information about the Korean War, and there are some important details that I think could help you. I would also say that the presentation of communism and what exactly it represents in history is maybe a little simplistic. I think, again, that's for the purpose of telling a narrative, and I do think that it generally represents North Korean communism quite well. It's worth noting that communism looked different in every country, and it had its reasons. Frequently it was quite brutal, but it almost always had different reasons for looking brutal. In the Soviet Union, in North Korea, in China, those are probably your three worst examples of communism turning into these awful dictatorships that killed millions of people along the way, but they also had very different reasons for doing that. So I will say that if you come away with this thinking that you have a better understanding of communism, I would say just keep that limited to North Korean communism. Even then, I do think there's still a little bit more to understand. I think the fact that communism is openly anti-religious, it makes it an easy target for the subject matter of this book. But that being said, I still found the story to be very compelling, very fascinating, and certainly very inspiring. And I would encourage anyone that wants that type of read to pick this book up. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments on this book or other books of this nature. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on the notifications, and until next time, keep those pages turning.